The purpose of today's tutorial, dubbed Biodiversity, is to provide an insight into how global communities are addressing the increasing threat to pollinators and the important role that they play in preserving our biodiversity. I really hope you enjoy today's discussion. So what does biodiversity actually mean? In simple terms, biodiversity refers to the relationship between the planet and each of the varying life forms that exist in an area or environmental ecosystem, including an inherently important insect, the bee. According to recently completed research, our relationship with the bee can be traced back over thousands of years in several different countries. In Australia, as an example, some studies have identified Aboriginal artwork containing bees that is approximately 4,000 years old. Despite the long-term relationship humans have with bees, there has been a sustained decline in global bee populations, and unfortunately, we are one of the leading causes in their demise. Now that bees are a global priority, their preservation has created a wave of community action to protect them. The increased growth in global human populations, combined with continued urbanisation in previously rural areas and changes to forest and natural landscapes, is having a detrimental effect on the natural habitats of wild bees. This has been reported in almost every part of the world. These impacts are being further compounded by the highly volatile changes to temperature, the short and long-term droughts occurring in different parts of the world, recurring bushfire, and the high concentrations of air pollution brought on by these global events. Simply, bees are not adapting to continual changes in the climate. But it's not just the impact of humans or climate change affecting bees. Managed bee colonies, although important for pollination, are often transported to areas with established wild bee colonies. The research tells us that wild bees typically die when competing for food with other, more dominant species of bee. Additionally, when managed bees are introduced to wild bee populations, this can often lead to viruses or pests being transferred between species. This is an issue currently affecting parts of Australia with reported varroa mite outbreaks that started earlier this year and continue to run rampant. The importance of bees in biodiversity cannot be understated. They are principally responsible for pollinating over 100 of our key food crops at a global scale. To put this into perspective, this literally means that 1 in every 3 mouthfuls of food you eat comes directly from bee pollination. Beyond the obvious relationship to our food sources, bees help drive sustainable incomes in a variety of different industries, and bee produce can be seen in several household products that we consume each and every day. According to honeybee.org.au, Australian bees contribute in excess of 14.2 billion annually to our economy. Interestingly, during 2019, a team of researchers successfully mapped the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals against bee contribution to biodiversity. Their findings suggest that bees contribute to 15 of 17 of the goals and may help to deliver 30 of the Sustainable Development Goal targets. Pollinator decline is, arguably, a wicked problem that requires a multi-dimensional response and, importantly, a globally coordinated approach. Although there isn't sufficient time to cover this today, I'll outline some key community approaches being used to stimulate global improvement in bee populations. Considering some of the challenges that we've covered in the earlier parts of this presentation and the important role bees play in biodiversity, it's easy to worry that the world might end. But fortunately, it's not all doom and gloom, and there has been some significant improvement in bee populations across the globe. In Brazil, community-based restoration projects to promote and build biodiversity in rainforests is having a major impact on bee conservation, and importantly, helping to drive a resurgence in bee recolonisation in areas that suffered historically due to widespread deforestation. An important step in adapting landscapes focuses on creating bee habitats between farming crops to reduce the impact on bee colonies while achieving a balance between farming and biodiversity. Oslo, as an example, has mature bee corridors within the city to promote harmonisation between bees and urban environments. Importantly, several countries who have recognised the importance of bees have also improved their regulatory approaches to bee preservation. For example, in 2017, the United Kingdom introduced a Protection of Pollinators Bill to support bee populations and identify the right approach to their long-term management. The values that underpin the work occurring to restore bee colonies across the globe aren't complex. In fact, they're abundantly obvious. Although we cannot change the course of history, we can develop a globally recognised approach to prevent the continued and ongoing decline of bee populations. Without bees to pollinate our crops, a substantive portion of our primary food sources would dry up at a rapid rate. Many populations would be pushed to the brink of starvation, and our ability to recover and quickly restore these important food sources is almost impossible. Moreover, when you consider the importance of biodiversity for the ultimate preservation and sustainability of our planet, bees play an incredibly important function in helping us to protect the environment for today, for tomorrow, and for our future generations. That brings us to the end of this tutorial. I really want to thank you for your time, and I hope that you enjoyed the presentation. Importantly, I also hope that you have a better understanding of how bees contribute to biodiversity. I've also created some questions to help you reflect on the presentation and look forward to our discussions. Thanks again.